Good morning, everyone. I will be refuting Jake's claim that television is bad for the well-being of Americans, and his supporting claims that Americans would be more productive without television. Parents put their young children in front of TV for education, which is linked to social behavior and slowing a child's development, and his third supporting claim that TV causes depression. About the main proposition, this is not a claim of fact, this is a claim of value. Bad is a word that we use as a value to describe a value, not a fact. And that our advocate is making a sweeping generalization by using the entire block. Television and the not stating specific types of programs, therefore implying all television is bad, and that television is bad only for Americans. Claim one, that Americans would be more productive without TV. He claims that the average American spends 153 hours watching television a month, and an additional 3 hours of video online, with adding up to approximately 1,900 hours of television a year. The advocate's evidence regarding how much television we watch is, and the devices they watch on, is solid, but that doesn't support his argument that it doesn't support his argument because it does not relate productivity to well-being. And that kind of dilutes the strength of the argument. You have to tell us, what do you mean by productivity? Spanking children, playing video games, whatever your productivity is, and how that relates to what you would consider to be our well-being, our health. Claim two, that parents put their young children in front of TV for education is linked to social behavior and slowing a child's development. The claim that they sit their children down to watch television for about 2 hours for the specific reason, thinking that is important for the education of their children, is only a partial sample of the evidence from the American Association of Pediatrics policy on media use by children younger than 2 years. What the report says is that parents report that they view their television as a peacekeeper and a safe activity for children while preparing dinner, getting ready for work, or doing household chores. Many parents feel better knowing that the programming their children watch has been described as educational. Parents who believe in that educational television is very important for healthy development are twice as likely to have the television on all or most of the time. This undermines the claim because it diffuses the reasoning that parents put their children in front of TV specifically for education. Also, this study is specifically for children under the age of 2 years old. The same study also claims that certain high-quality programs have educational benefits for children older than 2 years. Children who watch these programs have actually had improved social skills, language skills, and even school readiness. Claim three, television causes depression. First, once again, depression is a disorder, a clinical disorder, and the study that he used was for happy or unhappy. So the words can be man or man. Are we talking about man or man? Are you talking about depression or unhappiness? One of them is diagnosed by a doctor. The other one, you can pretty much tell yourself if you're happy or unhappy. The claim that watching too much television, using the study from the University of Maryland, should have included specific hours that the study claims are what happy people watch, which was 19 hours of television and 25 hours for unhappy people per week. Also, the study was based on 12 different countries, not just the United States. Contrary to the claim that television causes depression, the same study it says that it cannot be proven that television causes unhappiness, or rather does television, do unhappy people watch more television. Jake's final claim, or piece of evidence, regarding women nurses and a health study is irrelevant because women do not represent a sufficient, the women are not a sufficient representation of the term Americans. Thank you. She hasn't watched her. I was just kidding about the karaoke.
All right, well, the structural issues are all fine. I do think maybe you get a little bit caught up with the challenge at the beginning about the word bad. I assumed that maybe the terminology bad is value-based. I understand that, although my assumption is that the advocate meant harmful as opposed to bad. And so it's a perfectly legitimate thing to say. I just don't know that it gets you that much in the long run. If his secondary claims really talk about what a harm is and define it, then that's a minor quibble, and I don't know that it really would be a deciding point in an argument. The idea that it's a sweeping generalization, I like that idea that you're going to approach that, but I think you're going to have to show that there are, in fact, significant exceptions and tie that back into your argument. And you do that in a couple of places. For instance, on the second point, you say his evidence only applies to children under 2 watching television, which is not particularly useful. And then he makes the sweeping statement that it's bad for kids or unproductive for kids, which ignores all of the research that suggests that there are lots of programs that do help the kids get ready for school, develop language, become more engaged or outgoing as a consequence, and that shows why his statement needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because it ignores conditions or circumstances under which there is a benefit that is provided by television, and this is just one of them. Any others that I provide would also undermine that and show that it is in fact a sweeping generalization. So I think you've got the right argument there. I think that one works a little bit better. I just think you need to tie it in the supporting points a little bit more. Since you've made that as a major premise before you even got to those supporting points, well, let's come back to it and remind us that that was the argument that you are criticizing his general position on. Let me see. You asked some legitimate questions about productivity on the first point. Well, what do we mean by productivity? What would they be doing instead? Those kinds I think those are reasonable questions to ask. Well, how long have we had television?
1948.
Yeah, well, it's been around a long time, 60, 70 years now. What's the productivity level of Americans when it comes to the economy, business, consumption, home ownership, any of those things? Well, let's see. Over the last 70 years, have we got higher home ownership than we had before? Do we have higher levels of employment? Do we have smaller amounts of wasted time? Are we producing more products? Any of those kinds of things? If you're talking about productivity, let's find some measures of productivity. He doesn't have any. That's a legitimate criticism to make. I was waiting for the other shoe to fall, though, where you show us we have got plenty of productivity, and in fact, television might increase our productivity because it makes us more aware of problems that we then have to get on top of and respond to, like on news programs, for instance, or warnings. A lot of people discover problems with their credit, for instance, because there's a news story that says, Target has been breached, Walmart has been breached. What's the last one that got breached?
Home Depot.
Home Depot.
There's a new
there was
one.
something like just this week.
Just this week there was another.
Home Depot, whatever it is. Kmart. There you go. That's the one I was thinking of, which is really surprising because I didn't think anybody shopped at Kmart anymore. Yes, no, there are. But it's one of those things where you could say, and people learn about that on the news, and guess what they do? They go and change their passwords. They check their their credit ratings, that kind of stuff. In other words, there's a lot of stuff that television does provide that we can make productive if we do this, which again undermines the sweeping generalization that he is making there. I just think that you found good issues to talk about, but you can sell them more.
I was scared on the productivity one because I was like, if I stand up from the couch and move my finger up and down like this, I'm being productive. So like, I didn't want to attack. I didn't want to.
Well,
I
think you got a legitimate question. What is he talking about concerning productivity? Mm-hmm. There's an assumption that people would spend more time with their kids. Is that what he means by productivity, or does that mean that they'd spend more time on the golf course? Mm-hmm. Both of those are different activities. Which one is more productive, and is there any proof that one would be the preferred option to the other for people? I don't know that is the case. And there are lots, like we said, there are lots of ways to measure productivity. Let's find some of those measures and drop the other shoe, like I said. On the second part, I like the idea that where you explain that the parents aren't necessarily using it as a like the babysitting thing. They just don't drop their kids in front of the TV. They do that because it, like you said, they view it as keeping the peace, doing something that gives them a few minutes to prepare and, guess what? Be productive. So the kid is watching television, so the parent can get ready for work, make a meal, do some laundry, which are all the kinds of things that we assume maybe would be productivity. Okay, so the kid maybe isn't that productive at that particular moment, but the parents are productive as a consequence of that sort of thing. So that, I think there are ways to look at that. The evidence that you had there was only vaguely cited, but I think you've got a nice idea there. And on the depression one, I think that you have a legitimate challenge on the causality thing, just like we were talking about it. Is it that people become depressed because they watch 5 more hours of television a week, or do people who are depressed watch 5 more hours of television a week? I think that's a perfectly legitimate question. If I could ever remember that example, I will use that as my alternative to the example that I'm using when we talk about it. The problem is I can never remember these things.
Paper's yours.
I hear them all the time, and I just don't remember them. But I thought that was a good experience. Okay.